As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is focused on keeping our loons in top condition. And with expertise in orthopedics, sports medicine, heart care, and more, Allina has the team to keep your family in the game too. The experts at Allina Health take the time to get to know you as a whole person, helping you achieve wellness for your mind, body, and spirit. It's an altogether better kind of healthcare. Learn more at allinahealth.org. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sound of the Loons. And this time I get to be joined by the one, the only, Bakaye Dibassy, going to join me to talk a little bit about, I want to talk about your career. I want to talk about you coming back from an injury, but I just want to check in. Like we just talked about it, that $1 million smile. How are you doing on this beautiful, I think it's Tuesday, the 20th of June. How are you doing on this Tuesday afternoon?
I'm doing good. I'm great. I just finished training and I'm happy to finish training, to be back with the team. And the weather is nice in Minnesota, so I enjoy it.
Yeah, you've endured enough of the cold in Minnesota, so now it's nice. I mean, I know it's hot right now, but I will take the heat and humidity any day over that cold walk from, the locker room to the bubble in the wind tunnel, and it's like 20 below, and it's like, what are we doing here? When are we going to Orlando for preseason?
Exactly. Same. Same.
So when you, I want to talk about your career and when you came to Minnesota United, because I think when you joined Minnesota United, it was like this revelation to have you be a part of this back line. And Michael Boxall, who had been there for some time, had joined in 2017 when Minnesota United went to MLS. But then now it was like he had a consistent center back pairing partner and a left-footed center back. And the way you guys clicked right from the get-go, how did you end up at Minnesota United? Why Minnesota United? And then what was that like when you arrived and a part of this league, a part of MLS? Take me back to those moments.
But when my first contact with Minnesota United, it was in the middle of COVID, the pandemic. So they called me. They wanted to have some information and other stuff. So me at first, I was like, I didn't know if I wanted to come in MLS or not, because they stopped our league in France, Ligue 1. They stopped it, but we didn't know if they will restart it or not. And finally, then they end up stopping the season. So I think for me to come in Minnesota, it was the right timing. So they ended the season over there, and then I just give my agreement with Minnesota and try a new experience in USA. Yes.
So what was your impression of the league? Because we always ask players that have played elsewhere, what is sort of the perception of MLS before you come that other people have told you or that you've witnessed? And then what is it like when you actually get here and play in it?
Before I didn't know the MLS, I heard about it, but it wasn't like a league I was following. And when I had the contact with Minnesota United, I asked some player I know who were playing in the league, like Romain Metani or Chris Mavinga for Toronto, and some players like this. And they talked me about the league. So I had a picture a little bit how the league was. And when I came, I was impressed by all the facilities and the professionalism of the people around this league and the players too. They are very good players over here, and it's getting better and better. So I was like surprised a little bit because we don't talk overseas. We don't talk a lot about the MLS. But when I came, I was like surprised, and everybody is involved. Everybody is professional. So I'm very, very happy to be here.
When you look back at last season, and we talked with Kayce a little bit, and of course we've chatted with different sporting staff and training staff throughout your injury, your recovery, the rehab, and all those things. Was that the first major injury that you had in your career? Because I know you take incredible care of yourself, and that doesn't always matter because there's other guys that take great care of themselves, and still can be a freak thing. But was that the first major long-term injury that you had in your career?
Yes, it was. It is the first time I had a big injury like this. It's the first one.
What was that moment like for you in that time when that happened on the field that day? Because you've probably done that tackle, that positioning 1,000, 1,000,000 times over. Did you know right away, instantaneously, that this was different? That it was something was different than any other muscle thing or anything you've ever dealt with?
No, because I thought, because it was the tendon, it is the tendon. So I thought the player in front of me kicked me. So I didn't notice yet. At first, I didn't notice it was like a muscle tearing. Like I tear my muscle. I didn't know. So I just like scream at pain. But when the pain like keep getting like worse and worse, I knew there was something weird or like something bad.
Something not quite right,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
At that moment.
Yeah.
So then talk us through that process, because I think it really does take a village in these moments to sort of lay out the plan, figure out the process, going through surgery, what the rehab looks like. Somebody may tell you, Donnie or Kayce may say, hey, this is the timeline we're looking at here. And I know in your brain, you're going, yeah, that's a no. I'm going to be back way faster, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. But sometimes it's just the nature of the body. What was that process like for you?
No, it was like, but Dr. Fossum, he told me right after I get back in the locker room, he told me like you will have surgery. So I was like, okay, but I wasn't like ready for all that. And no, after I switch quickly to
like
the
your
rehab process.
mindset.
Yeah, exactly. And then my mindset to be ready to after surgery get into rehab and try to come back as fast as possible. But like you said, it doesn't work like this. It doesn't work like this.
So what did you learn about yourself in that process? Because sometimes the mind can only, the mind is insanely powerful. Sometimes it's the mind pushing the body, and sometimes it's the body going, oh, heck no. Slow down. You got to take a step back. Don't push it too hard, because long-term you want to, be making the right path. What was the biggest thing you learned about yourself in this process?
The biggest thing I don't know about myself, it was I'm not sure, but I think it's like I think everything is mental, like in the head, and I learned like there's something you cannot like go faster than the time it takes. So yeah, you just have to take the time, be focused on yourself, and let the time do the job. This
When
type of,
you go ahead.
now this type of injury, you cannot like try to do some stuff if the body is not ready. So you have just to wait until like you healed first, and then start working slowly, and it's really step by step. You cannot like burn the step, like we said in France.
When you look at the process, how did you handle the day to day? Because I was saying sometimes when athletes go through injuries, some like to not be around the team, and it's hard for them to watch training when they can't be a part of it. And some want to, come in and do their gym work or their rehab and then go home because it's hard to see what you can't do. And some want to be around it because it fuels them. Where did you fall in that? And was every day kind of different?
I was kind of lucky because I get injured at the end of the season. So I stayed just after my rehab, my surgery, sorry. Just after my surgery, I was coming at the facility like almost every day to have my treatment. So after it was the end of the season, so I get back in France. And there with the team, we had the plan to go at the Clairefontaine is the French national team center. They have a rehab center over there. So I was there with other players who plays in League One or different league and all injury players. So it was nice to be around them, around each other, to like help each other because everybody was struggling a little bit and talking to each other, helping each other. So it was nice to be like around like other players, injury players. So it was nice from the team to let me go to this rehab center. Yes.
So then when you get back to Minnesota and you rejoin that team and that group, and there are other guys that are injured and you're all in the gym together, you're all doing rehab together, you got your own little, crew, right?
Yes.
Then what was that like when you actually got to join back into training, whether that was step by step? What was that like to finally like be actually doing something with a soccer ball and the camaraderie, the vibe you get from the guys and the energy to step on the field?
No, it was like a freedom, like to to just like get back on the field, work on the ball. Even if sometimes it was only like 10 minutes, like with the ball and just running. And I remember the guys was like clapping for me to get back on the on the field and making jokes. And it was really nice because I miss playing and I really miss playing. I do that since I'm young and I was lucky I didn't have a big injury, so I'm used to play. I'm used to be on the field. Yes, it was tough mentally, but I'm lucky I have people with me, so they helped me a lot. The team, the from the owner to the staff member, everybody was texting me and yeah, message and no, I got support, so. I think it's a good thing for me. Yes.
When you look at the team and your perspective now, because sometimes when you're sitting out and you're injured, you can gain a different perspective. I've seen, the camera shots of you and Robin and some of those guys sitting up in the suite or, together watching the game from a different perspective. Was that kind of unique too? Because you're like, you're taking a step back to see what's happening on the field and what's taking place. Was that like a different perspective for you this time?
Yes. First, it's very hard to watch his teammates play, and I don't like it, but I had no choice. And yes, yes, you have a different perspective, and my perspective is we have a really good team. We have a really good team. We can do a good thing on the field. And I think there's always a part in the season and when you struggle and to win, you cannot win or all this stuff. But for me, what we're doing, it will be good because we have all the ingredients. So,
yes. Yeah. And what are you when you get back on the pitch, and I don't know officially, and you don't have to say when that will be for an actual game. I know you guys have a game of the weekend coming up here, and I'm not sure like what your status is. But when you look at what you bring to this team, what would be sort of your paragraph that you would write about yourself in your bio that this is what Bakaye does, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is. Or maybe what would guys say about you if you had to tell me that?
I don't know. I don't like to talk about really about me.
Everybody always says that. Come on, just go for it.
No, but I think because I'm not the youngest in the gym, so the guys can count on me. I like to give them some advice. I like to talk because I talk a lot on the field. It's my nature. Sometimes good, sometimes it's bad, but I talk a lot on the field, and I think, yeah, they know they can count on me on the field during the game. So maybe it's reassure them, like maybe I don't know. To be, I don't
I
know.
love it. Hey, well, we all witness it. We all witness it. We know what you're saying. And Kayce and everybody else, everybody echoes the same thing, that you are a leader on this team, that you're vocal, that the guys lean on you. They look up to you. They appreciate your feedback. And I mean, first and foremost, they appreciate how you play the game, how you go about what you do, because they know that they can count on you. And if you're yelling at somebody, it's because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You can't yell at somebody if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I just love that you're going to be back in the mix. I'm excited to see when that is and when you step on the field. And, maybe it'll be a home game and then you get that Allianz Field crowd, and it's going to be a joyous moment to be out there warming up and part of that team and back on the field again, because I know they've missed you. And I appreciate you taking the time, because like I said, it's been busy. It's been a grind. I'm excited to see you back out there again. And hopefully, there's a lot of games coming up. So the depth of every roster is going to be tested with Leagues Cup and everything else coming up. Yeah. So I appreciate you taking the time. I'm looking forward to you being back out there. I'm glad you're back out there. I'm glad you listened to your body and didn't try to come back too fast. So you know what? Enjoy that moment, that first national anthem, that first whatever moment you touch the rock on your way out to the middle of the pitch and get to participate in that starting lineup. So I appreciate you taking the time today, Bakaye.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll see you. Yeah. We'll see you around. We'll see you up at the training center. And of course, next time you're on the field for Minnesota United. But stay tuned, everybody. Segment number 2 of Sound on the Loons coming up with Kayce Godwin, assistant athletic trainer for Minnesota United. The newest chapter in the rivalry between MLS and League MX is coming to Minnesota this summer. The 2023 Leagues Cup arrives at Allianz Field July 23rd when the Loons take on Club Puebla in their first group stage match. Just 3 days later, a date with Chicago Fire will wrap up MNUFC's group play. For more details on this new competition or to secure your tickets before they're gone, visit MNUFC.com today. Alrighty, everybody, segment number 2 of Sound of the Loons this week. And now I get to be joined by assistant athletic trainer for Minnesota United, Kayce Godwin, who has taken time out of her ridiculous schedule, but maybe coming off a few days off. I mean, I know you don't really get days off, but sort of days off. So I appreciate you taking some time to hop on with me today to talk a little bit about your role, your job, getting into this crazy sport we love and call soccer, and working in men's professional sport, all of the above. So I appreciate you taking the time. Good afternoon, Kayce. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to be here and answer any questions that I can. So yeah, this is exciting. This is totally not my space at all because I'm such a background person. So yeah, this is cool.
I love it. That's what I love. I love making people feel real uncomfortable and throwing them in this spotlight where they're
job well done.
Yeah. So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to just throw her I'm not going to throw you on the hot seat because I wouldn't do that to you. Of
course.
But I do, I want to talk a little bit about, because I get asked the question a lot. So I want to ask you the question, how did you get into this field? We won't even get to the men's sports yet. We won't get to professional sports, but just athletic training. What was it that drove you? What was your passion? Where did this come from? How did this come about?
Yeah, so my story is a little bit different than kind of the quote unquote traditional athletic training trajectory. So I had another career outside of athletic training after undergrad. So I actually worked for the government for about 4.5 years. I worked for the Department of Defense. I'm originally from Oklahoma, so I worked in Oklahoma City. And basically it was a great opportunity, but it was a desk job. I was working for the Air Force as a civilian. And it just was not, I could not see myself doing that for the rest of my life. It was not a great fit. I learned some things that even still today help me. But I needed something else. So I'm like, all right, well, what am I going to do? I knew at that time in my life, I was actually planning to move to Virginia. So I started thinking about, okay, what do I love? I grew up playing sports. I like science. So it kind of, I can't even really remember how I came up with athletic training because I never had an athletic trainer. Like it wasn't really a thing when I was growing up. And I happened upon it. Kind of long story short, I applied to a program, a master's program. I got into that at Shenandoah University in Virginia.
How beautiful there.
Oh yeah, super beautiful.
My gosh.
And it was a very a rigorous program. It was 2 full years of just so much information. And so I didn't even really realize what athletic training was until I was already in the program. I'm like, oh, this is a lot more. But it worked for me. You know, I learned so much, how much science goes into everything that we do and just so many things. So it fit me a lot better than what I was doing. So then I ended up moving to the Twin Cities and I started a job working in D3 athletics. So prior to starting at Minnesota United, I was working, I started at Hamline University, and then I went to Augsburg for a few years, and I went back to Hamline. And around that time, there was a per diem position open with the academy that was opening up. So on a whim, I was like, let me just apply, because at that time it was just a part-time position. So I applied, and Stacy emailed me back. And first of all, I was starstruck. I'm like, oh my God, she actually emailed me back. I did not think that would ever happen.
Stacy Harden, for those that don't know.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Stacy Harden. So she brought me on. That position actually morphed into a full-time position. So I kind of did a little bit of Hamline and then full-time with the academy. They restructured. So I was the only athletic trainer with the academy at that time, which was a new challenge for me. And then COVID happened, and yeah.
That was another new challenge.
That was another huge challenge. And then, the academy went away for a little while. I waited. Stacy brought me back. I took over the COVID workload. And that's how I eventually ended up with being here full time with the first team.
Well, and how crazy, if you think about it, that window of time where you were flooded with the information of the School of Shenandoah, information overload, but still felt like you were in something that you were passionate about and that you were on the right path. Then all the craziness of moving here, switching universities, academy, part-time, COVID, back into full-time. This is like a breeze. You're just on a regular schedule now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, but I feel like all of it I felt really prepared once I started, getting into the field and doing things. And so much of it comes with experience actually doing it. You can know all the things, you can be the best student, but until you're actually out in the world, getting experience, it's just, that's just part of it. So it has been a great fit for me. I love what I do. It's exciting. It is a ton of pressure, but I like that. So
every day has to be different. You probably don't see the same twice. When we see the injury report and it's oh, hamstring, quad, that's not telling the story, right? I mean, every little thing and each individual is so different and so unique that a textbook isn't going to cut it. It really is truly about on the job experience and gaining that. Well, talk to me then about what about the people side of it? Because you were talking, we can talk about injuries, but at the end of the day, they're all people. They all have different emotions, ways they push themselves, ways they don't. Motivation, families, life, there's all these other things. And mental health is such a big thing now too, which it always should have been, but it's even more in focus now especially when guys have long-term injuries, which, we talked to Dibassy in the first segment of the podcast. How much did you feel like you were fit for this? Not because just the science and the medical and the sports, but the people aspect of it, or were you fully ready for that aspect of it?
It's funny. To me, that is a larger part of all of it. I think, almost than anything else. And that was something that I learned pretty quickly, on the job. So going back to my background, my prior work life. So I actually have a bachelor's degree in psych and a master's degree in HR. So I was kind of doing that whole thing anyway. And mental health has always been, especially in sport, has always been a kind of a little niche of mine that I've been interested in, cultural competency, all of these things, and kind of trying to find where that fits into my role as a clinician. I have different experiences than anybody else. So trying to be what the best ally that I can, being an active listener, trying to understand where these patients are coming from. And that's not just with the club, but even at whatever level that you're working, these people are individuals and they have different backgrounds and they have different reactions to everything. So to me, the biggest piece of my job is trying to understand who the players are as people first, kind of building that trust, that rapport, and you're going to have different relationships with different players. But I think my number one goal is for them to understand that I'm here not just for their safety, well-being, injury eval, all of those things, but I'm here to listen and try to at least be understanding, kind of have an open door policy. And if they have things that they want to talk about or not, that's totally up to them, but just trying to be there for them for whatever they need. So to me, that's a big piece of building that. So then they trust me with other things when it comes to injury stuff, or I know okay, so specifically like with Bakaye, I've worked with Bakaye, since he got here. I remember when we first signed him. So you kind of learn the players ways, their personality type, is this normal for him? Is it not? Is something going on? Is he not feeling this? You know what I mean? So I think it's really important to be in tune with those different characteristics. And so you can notice when something's off.
Mm-hmm. And plus, I hate to, toot our own horns here as females, but we kind of have this intuition. Yeah. I'm a big body language reader, even when I'm doing a game, I'm like, something seems a little funky there, you can just read it. And so when you're around someone that often as you are around these guys, whether it's traveling or a day-to-day basis, and it's life and everything all wrapped into one, it's not just about the player and the injury and what they're doing on the pitch or on the training field. Then what about, then you bring in the dynamic of coaching staff in the sense that they want their guys ready to play, right? This is about health, well-being, getting our guys ready, getting our guys fit, making sure they're the strength and conditioning, the warm-ups, the this, the that, guys coming back from injury, guys are wanting to push themselves, and then maybe they're not ready. Maybe coaches are wanting them to be back, but they're not ready. So you have this, that psych degree has to come in real handy for all the different things that you're juggling when a team is, it's different than any other, it's different than even working in an orthopedic office, because you are dealing with a professional sports team that the end goal is to compete and win games. How do you balance and communicate with all those different moving parts? How does that break down?
Yeah. Well, luckily for me, I'm not usually it's usually kind of on Donnie to do most of that communication, but I think overall the biggest thing is collaboration. Like you said, we're all here for the same goal, I think. And again, it goes back to getting to know not only the players, but the people that you're working with, the people that you're working for, so that there's this understanding of why I'm here, how I operate, here's how I want to collaborate with you. And yes, certainly there are going to be times where perhaps the player wants to get back faster. The coaches, depending on XYZ factor, that's all happening all at the same time. They're needing somebody. And sometimes we do have to be the ones to kind of rein it in a little bit, so that, because our number one priority, obviously, advocating for the player, keeping them safe. This is their career. The stakes are very high. But I would say that all just goes back to trusting our knowledge and having a good working relationship. And so far for me, anytime that I have had to step in and communicate with the coaches or any of the other technical staff, it's always been a pretty good experience for me. I think as long as you're communicating the why, here's the plan. It's not just me saying, he thinks is a good idea. If you know what you're talking about and you lead with that, I think that I think they're going to understand that. And from my experience so far, it's been really good.
Well, and at the end of the day, like you said, first priority is always the health and well-being of the athlete, of the player, right? And I think everybody's on the same page there, right?
Yep.
And then the second thing is you're all out for the same thing. You're out for this club to be successful. And at the end of the day, that becomes results on the pitch. So whoever is available. So everybody's working towards the same goal. And at times, I mean, sports is passionate. So things can, I mean, we've all seen it, whether it's just in a soccer, tennis, at practice, like there's emotions, there's passion, there's competitiveness, there's energy. Guys are trying to fight for spots.
For sure.
But at the end of the day, the goals are all the same. How has the technology and science changed what you do since you started? And even when you were in school being like inundated with this knowledge, now the technology, is it a blessing? Is it a curse that we can monitor everything? Is it a combination of the two? And I mean, Donnie's been around for a long time. He's probably a little old school, he's a hockey guy, but I mean, my gosh, we just saw the Stanley Cup final injuries come out. This guy was playing with a, punctured spleen and a broken rib and a this and a that.
It's wild.
But like, how has that changed your world in just the last 5 years, let alone decade, maybe?
Well, yeah, it was funny actually because I was an older student when I went back to school for athletic training. So I was one of the oldest in my cohort, and like there's iPads and there's like everything, because we didn't have any of that. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do these people already know all this stuff? Like, I don't, so that was a bit of a learning curve for me, but that was just kind of what's to come. Right. So I think in our field, the technology and all of the bells and whistles and all of the things that we have over with, like in Sean Buckley's area in performance, all of the measures, the tools. I mean, we can measure pretty much any variable that you want. And in a way, it is a blessing and a curse, because we do have all of this information at our disposal. And I think at times, how much information is too much information? You kind of get, you can kind of get lost in some of it. But I think overall, just having all of these things at our disposal, it's been really cool to be in the professional setting and having things that, I wouldn't have thought I would get to use, So that part has been really cool. And it's always changing. I mean, a big part of what we do is staying up to date on evidence-based practice. So what is the literature telling us? And that evolves. I mean, that's whether it's blood flow restriction, whether it's soft tissue therapies, all these different things are always kind of changing. So it's something that, it's fun for me to kind of stay up to date with it, but you have to stay up to date with it because you don't want to do things that are like, this is left in the Stone Age. We've evolved past that. So, yeah.
And I think about, back in the day when I was in preseason and everybody got the same preseason workout. It was like a certain number of sprints, a certain number of this. There was no load management. It wasn't based on your size, your abilities, your muscle mass, like you're this, you're that. I mean, it's so tailored now, every single person's training workout, whether that's on a daily basis, an off-season program, whatever it might be. And now with injuries, even more so, it was like, oh, you did your ACL, this is what you do. You did your whatever, this is what you do. I mean, so I feel like in that regard, more information is better because it can be tailored for each individual. And I remember, I feel like Adrian said one time, this was, years ago when they first came into MLS, and it was something about, the tracking monitors. And it was like, well, you think you worked that hard, but I can see this is what you did. So they can come in like real handy, like you're doing a lot of running, but is it purposeful running? What does that look like? And then for you guys, when you're doing okay, this is why he feels this way today, is because look at his numbers from yesterday. So it can come in handy for all parties.
Yeah, for sure. And especially with the numbers, because we do that, we gather that data every day and over the matches and looking at loads and tailoring things, like you said, to each player and kind of how the fixture week is. Or do we have 2 games a week for weeks on end? Or, so we do monitor all of that, and we're able to, change things as necessary. And we use that data to kind of look at down the road, other things that we do want to do perhaps for next season and in coming into preseason. So learning from what we're already doing and how we can get better. And, we do all of that for the players to, again, one goal.
All right, let's focus on Bakaye. He was on in segment number 1. We kind of started off focusing on you so we can get your background.
Sure.
Talk to me about what you can, because, we still learners, you're the athletic trainer, there's we don't need to deep dive into anything, and you disclose what you can and cannot.
Sure.
But when he went down, I mean, we're all like, whoa, like that doesn't happen. Yeah. That kind of scream, that kind of, he doesn't get injured ever.
Yeah.
And then the way he went down, and then coming to find out, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what was reported from our standpoint was a ruptured quad. And
yes.
And it may have, God only knows what else was going on once they went in there. But have you ever seen an injury quite like that? And then talk to me about that process with him specifically, and sort of how you managed through that, and his personality with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's exactly like you said. So whenever I think about, or whenever I talk about Bakaye's injury, going back to when it happened, and I've been doing this a while. I haven't been doing it all that long, but when like, I mean, the more that you're in this atmosphere, you can kind of understand, or can kind of tell, how things sound, how things look. Sometimes you see the injury and it's some catastrophic thing, and you can tell right away it's go time. Other times, like Bakaye's injury, I mean, it happened right in front of the bench. It's one that I will always remember. It's kind of one of those ones in your career that you'll never forget, just because I do know him. And the way that he screamed, like immediately I knew it was bad. Like, okay, there's something going on with his knee. I didn't really see it, because sometimes it can be, it can be hard to tell. So we respond really quickly. We're trying to go through the eval. We immediately wave, our physician, Dr. Greg Folsom, on. And in that moment, I'm trying to get Bakaye to kind of tell me what's going on, calm him down. And you couldn't, which is so unlike him. He's just so kind of, chill, even keel. I feel like I have a pretty good rapport with him to where he will tell me what's up, and I couldn't even get it out of him. So then we move on to the ortho exam on the field. And during this time, there's a million other things kind of happening at once, right? So it's a little bit, or a lot of it, chaotic, but you also have a job to do. You're thinking about all these other factors, because the game goes on, right? The coaches are kind of wanting to know a little bit of a status. They can see something's going on, probably not good, but they have to, do their part of their job. So you're weighing all of these things, you're trying to monitor to make sure that he's not going into any further emergency, shock or any of that. And during that time, that was when Dr. Folsom was like, yeah, it's not good. This is what I'm thinking it is. So immediately we take him into the locker room, and kind of the way that we're structured, we stay on the bench, but we have another athletic trainer. I believe it was Martin, went to the training room, and Neil, our AT/PT, was also in there. And they kind of handle it from there. Dr. Folsom's in there doing a more thorough eval and determining next steps, imaging, sending him in to see what we're really dealing with. So once all of that is kind of the traumatic part and the initial response, you finish the game, and it's on your mind, but you still have to, there's however many minutes left, and there's more guys on the field. So after the game, the plan is already laid out for next steps for him. And then, the next day we kind of regroup during our medical meetings and figuring out, surgery and all of these other things and what they look like. So with any kind of injury, we try to start rehab as soon as possible, because it does start kind of at day one, even before you have surgery, just to put them on a good trajectory to return eventually. With his injury, it is not one that I've dealt with before. I've dealt with similar ones. So essentially, he tore his quad right at the tendon. So this is where the whole quad, the muscle blends into the top of the kneecap. And that's basically what tore. So surgery was great, successful, all the things. And Bakaye is such a good patient. Like, he's going to do, whatever you ask of him. He's an exceptional professional. And as far as I know, I believe this is the biggest injury that he's had. So we knew going in, this is going to be a long-term recovery. He's got a long road ahead, but he's got all of us to help him through that. And I think mapping out what things look like and being very honest and transparent with him, what the process looks like, kind of hopefully would set him at ease a little bit more, even though it is a daunting road. This happened last August, I believe. And, he's kind of just now getting back to kind of full. And so yeah, it's been a long road, but he's had such a great attitude. He's done everything that he's supposed to do. And to be honest, he's kind of a physical specimen, right? He's done all of the right things to get himself to this point anyway. So, it was I would probably bet a different challenge for him. But yeah, I think he's done an amazing job.
It's interesting too when you talk about that, because I mean, I shouldn't say that happens a lot, but there's a few cases every once in a while where this is like the first long-term injury, major injury that some of these guys have had, even if it's later in their career, because they do such a great job of taking care of themselves. And then maybe luck is on their side as well, because there's plenty of guys that take tremendous care of themselves and they still end up with an ACL or something else. Yep. It's just like on the unfortunate nature sometimes, but then it's that mental, emotional side of it. And they think they may be tough and they think they may have like gutted something out. And then it's nothing like you've ever been through before. It's not like getting benched. It's not like, dealing with a muscle pull. It's not like, something, it's a different kind of a challenge. And then when you see your teammates out there training every day, working in the gym every day, and sometimes you feel like, I've read an article once, it might've been somebody from DC United or somewhere, where they were like, I can't even go to training every day. I get in, I do my work before and I go home and like I sit at home because it's harder sometimes to be around it when you can't be a part of it. And guys probably go both ways, and they probably ebb and flow throughout the process of their recovery about what they need and don't need mentally and emotionally from their teammates and from others. But with Bakaye specifically, because also the stage of his career that he's at, did you feel like he was maybe more well-equipped from like a maturity, appreciation, and I'm not saying that younger guys don't have it. I'm just saying like he's been through a lot in his career. He's been on different teams. He's been in different countries. Do you feel like there's a difference maybe sometimes with some more veteran players when they deal with something like this, as opposed to someone who's younger in their career and just trying to like get on the roster and solidify that starting spot, or is it just doesn't matter? It just depends on the guy, not necessarily the age.
Yeah, I think a lot of it probably does depend on how long they've been around or in the league or what their experience is. But yeah, so like with Bakaye specifically, I mean, he's a wise guy. Like he knows things, like he's worldly. He's, like you said, he's been around, like he's done this for a long time. And he's achieved things in his career. So I think while this is new territory for him, I think he was also very honest and real about like, okay, well, this happened. This is what it is. Here's what I got to do to get back. I mean, and it's not, again, this kind of injury isn't one that we necessarily see a ton. It's, I wouldn't say it's a freak injury, but in some ways it kind of is. Like there was no way to really predict it. It was a tackle he's done probably a million times. And for whatever reason on that day, it just kind of, it went on him. But like, guys are familiar with ACL stuff or meniscus. They kind of have a rough idea of what, I'm like, oh, timeline, this is how long, I'm going to get back faster, but okay. With this, I don't think he really had a super clear understanding of how long perhaps it would take. So that was part of the process as well, is explaining it, making sure that he understood exactly what the procedure was, exactly what the plan is going forward, implications for all sorts of things. And again, his age, where he is in his career, these are all factors that kind of affect his process. So I would say he took it amazingly well. And again, whether that's just a personality thing for him, or if it's, if this would have happened earlier in his career, I don't know what he would say, but from what I know of him, he's a very, like I said, he's a wise guy who's been around, seen a lot, and he understood kind of from the get-go what it would take to kind of get through it.
So then what about the joy when you see him step back on the training pitch? And I get it, like you've seen him in the gym, you've seen him this, you've seen him that, but once you see him, like, and I don't know what his availability is, I'm assuming hopefully for his sake it's coming up soon, but just in general, to be out amongst the guys, not running laps around, like legit training, small sided games, whatever it might be. I mean, what is that like to see his joy? And then like you as a staff, knowing that he's gotten to this point. You've helped him along the way. He's done the work. Like, what's that moment like when you see players come back?
Yeah, it's so cool because, it's probably one of the best things about this job to know that you had some small piece of his return or players like that. I mean, it was like that with Hassani as well. Like when he came back, because I was there right when he, had his injury, and just how it feels knowing that at least career wise and, personally, sometimes you're with players on their worst day. Like, that sounds dramatic, but it's so true. And you take that on a little bit. So then at the end of the journey, when you do see them return and hitting milestones, you feel so proud of them and proud to have had a part of it. We lay out the plan, they do the work, they do it. So when you do see him out at training and he's, when he returns to full training or he's doing a drill that he hasn't done before, you can see in him that it's all still there. The soccer is still there. The football of him is still there. He's just got to work on, the endurance and kind of shaking the rust off and all of that. But it's really, I don't know. It makes you feel proud. It makes me feel a little emotional because I'm like, oh, he's out there. He did it. He's doing it. And you feel worried, of course, because, it does feel scary, probably for them and for us. But it's usually that first milestone where they're like, okay, I'm back. I'm doing things. It feels really good. And then, from there, it's just like, okay, I get to watch this soccer player I've worked with for however many years go out and do his thing. So that it's really cool. It's a cool feeling. It's hard to describe.
Well, and the smile, he's got this like $1 million smile too, so I think that just like lights up the room. And then, what, it's interesting. You talk about seeing the joy on his face, seeing the joy on the staff, but the players, and especially a guy like that. I mean, we saw how the team they didn't like melt down last year, but there was clearly a change in the way the team played when he wasn't part of it. And everyone talks about Michael Boxall, and rightfully so, as a leader on this team and a center back. But I think Bakaye was actually one of those guys because you didn't hear him as much. The guys internally, and you guys know what a leader and a big part he is of that team, but maybe outwardly to the fans and everybody else, it's not as obvious. And then like once he was not there and missing, then you could feel it. And so then seeing the lift that even just him returning to the practice field gives the rest of the group, that's like just such a full circle, amazing moment.
Yeah. And he's such a presence. And like you said, when guys are out for a while, you kind of forget what it's like to have them there. So then when they do come back, you're like, oh yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Yep. I remember. And because he is vocal, like you'll hear him. I'm like, oh, there he is. And the players respect him. Like, I think that especially the younger guys, I mean, he's a teacher of the game, and how to be a professional. And, with the young guys or the newer guys, or even just, any of the guys, really, I feel you can tell that they respect him. For his body of work and the way he carries himself. And I just think that he's a really good leader and a really good teammate. So it does feel really good to have him back in his role.
I love that because I think you've witnessed so many things in your career, and the fans get to see him step on the pitch and give him, probably whenever that next moment is, hopefully it's a home game, standing ovation, whatever kind of. And when you just see those guys and their personalities and they're good people and what they've done to get there. And I love hearing your version of it because I just think we don't get to always hear that enough, because we get to talk to the players a lot and we talk to the coaches and we talk to, the sporting staff and whatever, but it's such a unique perspective. And I love what you said, because sometimes you're there on their worst day and then you get to be there on hopefully what's their best day in that full journey and that full cycle. So I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's an insanely busy schedule. I hope you got some rest during this international break. I know you guys don't have a midweek game, to my knowledge. You got Salt Lake, I think, on the weekend. So back into a normal grind before Leagues Cup gets underway. So Kayce, I appreciate you took care of me when I had my goofy indoor soccer injury. So athletes. I appreciate, right.
They don't change.
That's exactly why that's why I don't do it anymore.
Yes, they're stubborn and they don't want to hear what I'm telling them. But
no, I learned my lesson. But I appreciate you taking the time. You're an absolute rock star. I love seeing you out there with Minnesota United. Anytime I get the chance to connect with you. So I appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. This was cool.
All right, everybody, tune in next week. Another episode of Sound of the Loons. Minnesota United has a friendly coming up, plus Leagues Cup right around the corner, all sorts of action in the month of July. So stay tuned next week for another episode of Sound of the Loons.